This podcast is brought to you by the Texas Hill Country River region in Uvalde County. What's super unique about this area is that the Frio, Nueces, and Sabinal rivers are all located in the same county. It's like the hill country that you know and love, but really rural, so you're surrounded by wildlife, and life just kind of slows down out here, so you can enjoy the simple pleasures like campfires and fishing and just enjoying the company of the people that you love.
For more information, go to visituvaldecounty.com.
Welcome back, guys. So we have another episode of the In Between podcast. I am Jake.
And I'm Leah.
And today we have two guests that moved into the area recently, I guess. Is that correct?
Yeah. 2 years ago.
Almost 2
2 years.
Well, so you've been in the area.
And we are so excited that y'all moved here because y'all are all about food and all we do is eat. So, yeah.
The Webbers. So you have Morgan and Julia. Sorry, I wasn't sure if it was Juliet or Julia. So, well, nice to meet y'all and welcome.
Likewise. Thanks for having us on.
Yeah, thank you.
So we first came across and met y'all at a restaurant that you opened up.
Yeah.
It's called Gypsy Sally's in Leakey, Texas.
Mm-hmm.
Wait, I want to pause. So we didn't meet y'all, but I was stalking y'all forever with the first little teaser that y'all posted, which feels like forever ago, of the restaurant you were opening. I was like, oh my gosh, new restaurant, burgers and Tex-Mex. Oh my gosh. And then, so we were stalking y'all every day. When are they going to open? When are they going to open?
That was the big question.
Yeah, forever.
I think we would check religiously to see if there were any updates on y'all socials. We were we were hoping this was going to be the week. And I guess the first time we heard of it was it last year?
I don't even know.
Yeah, last summer we were doing pop-ups.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And when she sent me the pictures of some of the stuff that we're coming out with, I was like, what is this? What is going on here?
Yeah.
How did we not know about this?
Yeah, so we would love to know a little bit of y'all's backstory.
Sure.
And how the heck you guys ended up in Leakey, Texas, opening a restaurant. Who does that?
Yeah, my mom and dad bought a house just south of Leakey on the river in the 1970s for a little of nothing. So I've been coming out here my whole life. I'm going to be 41 in another month or so, and hadn't missed a summer out here. We would come up throughout the year. Didn't ever spend as much time up here as we wanted to, but my background is in restaurants and bars and hospitality in Houston. And so we have 8 restaurants there. And at the beginning of the pandemic, when March hit, everything closed down overnight, and we didn't know when anything was going to get back to normal or when it was going to open again. So our first son was 1.5 years old around that time. Julia was pregnant with her second. And
get ready, because this age seems so easy compared to a 1.5-year-old. Everything in the house has to move up 3 feet because they're just destroying
everything. And he was destroying. We had a tiny little historic house in the Houston Heights neighborhood, and he was destroying that
and we had no yard.
On repeat.
There was nowhere to be outside in our house. We just had nothing. We're let's go to Leakey. What are we even doing here?
Yeah, so we came out to my mom's house for, I guess we were there about 9 months.
Mm-hmm. Well, which is also where we got married. We got married at his parents' house in Leakey.
Yeah. So we stayed there until our second son was born. He had some health issues right out of the gate, so we were at Texas Children's for a while. And once we got the clean bill of health, we were back out here. During the pandemic, we switched from doing on-site management meetings with our staff every week to going to Zoom, which worked out well for them because open 7 days a week, somebody is inevitably going to have to come in for not much more than a catch-up meeting, that lasts 20 minutes, 30 minutes, and then move on with your day. But when we switched over to the Zoom stuff, we never went backwards, which freed us up a lot to not, need to be on site all the time. So we moved back out here around February of 21 when we closed on the house.
Yeah, we were kind of back and forth for a little bit. But.
Yeah. We still live on the road. I mean,
Yeah, Morgan will get a call and he's like, so we're having a meeting in Houston tomorrow. It's like, okay, I'll get up early and I'll drive.
yeah. And we have a distillery in Marfa. So Leakey's kind of halfway between Houston and Marfa. Wow. A 9-hour drive from Houston to Marfa is a beating. From here, I can, leave at a reasonably early time and still be there by noon, have a day of work. So, yeah, we make it work.
Yeah. So we haven't, I guess we'll get into that here in a bit. Or I guess this could segue into that. You said you have a distillery in Marfa.
Yeah.
How did that all come up?
I mean, a lot of my background on the restaurant side is really more specific to spirits and booze and cocktails and stuff. So I'm a deeply obsessive person. Like, if I get interested in something, I'll go down the rabbit hole and I will stay there as long as it takes. And when I come back up, it's like gasping for air. But I'm kind of an immersive learner when it comes to that, especially if I have an already kind of obsession with it. So, being involved on a detailed level with booze, making drinks was fun, but it was like, now I want to make the stuff that goes into the drinks. So we would travel to Marfa just on an almost yearly basis, maybe a couple times a year, just to kind of get away, and love that it's part of Texas, love that it's a totally different feeling part of Texas than any other part of the state. And had a couple of buddies also in the restaurant business that we just kind of on a whim threw together this idea for the distillery, put together a business plan, started shopping it around to a couple of investors, and got a lot of good feedback and good traction, and ended up buying this 1917 era grain mill in Marfa that had been a grain mill for almost its entire life until we closed on the property and started a heavy renovation project. Then the pandemic hit and nobody could come to work.
Everything paused.
So we started it in October of 2018. I don't know how the building was still standing on its own, but when we really started tearing it back and getting to the guts of what needed to be fixed, it was like the entire building needed to be fixed. So we were in a heavy demolition stage when the pandemic hit, and it just froze for a year. So we got it open in August of 2021. So we just celebrated our first year there.
And what type of spirit is it?
We focus on Sotol, which is a plant that grows in West Texas, starting around San Antonio. And it goes kind of West Texas, Southern New Mexico, Southern Arizona, and then all throughout Northern Mexico. It's a spirit that's been produced from that plant in Mexico for close to 300 years. But there's not really been a huge presence of it in the U.S. or specifically in Texas. Like, I found a couple of newspaper articles from the early 1900s about a Sotol distillery in El Paso that lasted, I think, 6 months before Prohibition hit, and then that killed that. And there's been some other applications for Sotol use in the U.S. It's just not anything like it is in Mexico. So we had this idea that, we've got all these wild plants around us, and we love the way the spirit tastes. It's kind of like a less smoky, more earthy green version of mezcal, which is made from agave. They're two totally different plants, but the process to make them's the same. So we focus on the Sotol. We've got gin, vodka, rum. We're also, highly focused on the rum. The grain mill used to supply all the molasses to local farms and ranches for their cattle needs. When the grain mill closed, one of our rancher friends in Marfa, who had a spur off of the railroad and big holding tanks, he started bringing it in by the rail car. And he was at the distillery one day last year, and he was like, "Yeah, man, I get this molasses and feeding cows." And I'm like, "Well, can we get some and ferment it and distill it out and see how it goes?" And our distiller at the time was a rum nerd to the deepest level, and
Yeah, that's an understatement.
yeah, he's one of the most forward-thinking rum guys in the country, and he just happened to be, working with us on the Sotol, and he got super excited about that. The easiest way for us to get it was for him to take the forklift with one of those big plastic agricultural totes, load the tote on the forklift and literally just drive it across Marfa.
He's just like driving down the street on a forklift, like waving at people.
Yeah, fill
Don't
it
mind
up and then just drive. I mean, hit every pothole in Marfa because none of the streets are smooth. Get it back to the distillery, and so we got into the rum thing that way and having a lot of fun with it because Sotol really you don't want to harvest it during kind of the hot monsoon season, which we've been experiencing more out there than here, shockingly, in the high desert. But it's kind of like wine grapes. When they get too much water at the wrong time, the sugars get diluted and your yield tanks. So we stop harvesting around May and we don't pick it up until October. So the rum thing gives us an opportunity to do stuff in between the Sotol work, but we could do a couple of liqueurs as well.
Yeah, I had never heard of it. In fact, I think the first time I heard of Sotol was when we were at Gypsy Sally's with Travis and Noah.
Yeah.
And y'all got to meet.
Yeah.
And y'all were kind of talking about it. I was like, what is this word?
Conversation was just like over our
What are they
head.
speaking?
You probably have it growing on the hillside.
yeah.
So we came back shortly after that day, and then I was having a conversation with Travis about it, and he was like, "Oh, look, there's one right there. That's the plant." And I was like, "Oh, I never knew you could make a spirit from that."
Yeah.
That is very interesting. I knew there were some other plants out here that some of the guys that were working on this house, they were familiar with, and they said, they used to make this drink with this plant that's around here, but it wasn't the Sotol.
I wonder what it was.
It was that's what Travis asked because he was telling me the same thing, and it was some another like weird name that you don't really hear.
Yeah.
But he said it's some strong stuff as well. But yeah, that was maybe 2 weeks ago.
Okay. Well, we need to figure out what that plant is.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Well, we have to revisit that when we get sometime after this podcast.
When you were talking about like deep diving into things, that's all Jake. So I'm sure you were like looking up the plant because the other day he pointed it out to me on the road. He was like, "That's a Sotol." I was like, "Oh, okay."
Yeah. For the past 2 weeks, I've been pointing it out.
I know where it all is now.
Yeah, but he does the exact same thing of that like deep dive into whatever it is that catches his attention in that moment, and we are all in.
Obsessed.
I want to switch over to you real quick, Julia. I know you're an artist. I would love to hear a little bit more about y'all's practice or your practice as an artist, because I'm an artist too.
Oh, awesome.
So
I went to art school, graduated and started making leather bags. Got a big industrial sewing machine, and I've been sewing forever, but leather is kind of a different beast, and kind of taught myself how to do that. And then we kind of met around that time when I had my line, and was selling to stores across the country and on my website. It was really fun. And then we had a baby and it all kind of paused. And then we had a second baby, and now they're getting old enough where I've been kind of doing that again and dusted off my sewing machine. We bought an old 73 Airstream for me to put all my stuff in, and so I've been kind of putting it all back together. And then since we've been in Leakey, I've been getting obsessed. I kind of also do the deep dive thing. And notice looking around, there's a lot of Angora goat farmers out here, and I was like, what is that about? Why the Angora goat? Like, I've never seen them except for out here. And started learning about the fiber and how you spin their fiber into yarn, and you can weave out of it or knit or whatever. And so then I got on Facebook Marketplace and bought a loom, as one does.
Just casually buy a loom.
Yeah. And it just barely fit through the door of the Airstream. I think we had to take one piece off and turn it a little wonky.
I mean, it weighs like 400 pounds.
It's really heavy. And so got that in. And so I've been kind of teaching myself how to weave, and eventually want to convince our neighbors who have Angora goats to let me get my hands on some
It's
hair.
kind of a wild, kind of regional story, because this, I mean, outside of South Africa and Turkey, right?
Yeah.
The biggest concentration of Angora goats was in this area, the hill country in Texas.
Like around Leakey specifically.
Yeah.
Like this, like Rock Springs, Leakey, like this area.
Yeah. And so the goats get sheared and all the wool goes to Rock Springs to this sorting house, and it gets graded and separated. And then it gets shipped to South Africa and it never comes back. So this once really important, you know, agricultural economy situation that doesn't even exist in Texas anymore. Which
Right.
is crazy. So she was like, well, how do we close the loop on that? It's like, we've got the goats, we've got the sorting house. How do you find a mill here to turn that into yarn and then dye it and get it to a finished product without ever leaving the state? So we kick around a lot of ideas.
Well, I guess as have been, I guess, an entrepreneurial kind of couple, you have that constant feedback loop where you might have an idea,
Yeah.
and then you'll have another. It might trigger an idea in your mind,
Yeah.
and then vice versa, and just kind of
Totally, it snowballs.
continuous,
Yeah.
I guess positive feedback loop.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
I know. It's like, and then we
most of the
wake up
times.
and we live in Leakey and we have a restaurant, and we're
Yeah.
like, whoa, what did we do?
What happened? We got bored during the pandemic.
Well, I guess because you couldn't do anything.
We couldn't do
right?
anything.
So
So we're like, let's get as many irons in the fire as possible.
So we came up with a bunch of ideas.
well, I hope a lot of those ideas have to do with stuff, maybe new stuff to come in the area.
Yeah. I
sure.
mean,
We're-
there's constant ideas. So I
Yeah.
don't even know where to start.
So what ideas do you have for the yarn? Like, as far as what kind of things you plan or hope to make with, if you can start?
Yeah. I don't totally know yet. There's a lot of steps in the process to go from the animal to a finished product that are all very industrial and specialized. And so I'm kind of trying to figure out which parts of that process I want to personally be involved in. And the internet is an amazing place. And I've found a lot of people on Instagram that I've been able to message that are close by that have they call it like a mini mill, like somebody's backyard mill. It's not like super industrial, but it's kind of halfway there. And so there are people in the area that are spinning yarn on like kind of a mom and pop scale. And then I found a woman who is working at the mohair and wool research lab out of San Angelo. And so she told me I could come by and get a tour whenever I wanted. And I haven't done that yet. But so talking to her about what they're doing. So they're basically, any farmer can go and bring a sample of their wool to the lab, and they will test each sample and tell you basically which of your animals are producing the highest grade of fiber. And so then you can breed your stock based on that, so that you're maximizing your profits. Which is really
pretty
awesome.
cool.
That is very cool
Yeah.
and interesting. But you've never been to the actual plant or?
To the lab, no, I haven't been there yet. No.
Wow. Well, seems like the more you dig in and find out stuff, and the more, I guess, it reels you in, because
Totally.
you find out cool stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like I would have never known.
Yeah.
Well, then there's the
That's a
woman
process,
in Camp Wood, Dolores Unique Designs, and she makes mohair jackets and has been for a really long time, and has a really had seemingly successful career doing that. And it's all mohair. It's and I don't think she gets it locally because I don't think she can. I think she has to buy it from warehouses in New York and,
Now, is that what they call fur from goats, mohair, or is it just
From the Angora.
Just from that type of goat.
From the Angora, it's called mohair.
Oh, okay. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now you know.
Yeah, I'm learning. I'm learning. So I'm curious because I have no idea, and I'm not even sure that we have 2 goats out there, but I know they're dwarf goats or pygmy, one of the two, either Nigerian dwarf or African pygmy goats.
Angoras kind of look like a poodle and a goat had a.
They look like a Muppet.
Baby.
They're like curly white hair, and then they have these teeny little horns.
They
They're
look
very
pretty
cute.
ridiculous.
Okay, so they don't have straight hair.
No, it's curly.
okay.
Yeah.
They
It's
kinda look
curly
like a
and they're
sheep.
white.
Sense.
Yeah, and there's kind of brownish gray ones too, but most of the ones around here are white. And our neighbors have a lot of them. I don't know how many.
Yeah, they
They're-
probably have 80 or 100.
and they have babies twice a year, twice a year, and oh my gosh, when they have their babies, I just I drive really slow down the street because they're so cute.
So you said you live in your mom had a house south of Leakey, but did y'all also buy?
We
live
did.
in
We're
Leakey?
just north of Garner.
Okay.
Yeah, so we're close to
We're
here.
close.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, when Leah said you're on the way, I was like, oh, okay, that'll probably be like 15, 20 minutes, but it was a lot
Yeah, I think we're
faster.
like 7 minutes.
Yeah, I think it's like 6 or 7 minutes away. yeah.
So,
I had to excuse myself. Luna had a blowout. So we had a wardrobe change.
nice.
So, new outfit for the podcast. But
yeah, probably not the last time and that'll happen.
oh no,
Yeah.
absolutely not. Well, did you already, because I would love to know about how y'all work together as a couple. Did y'all already talk about that? Or, like how much of the restaurant is you, or do y'all do it together? Or do you kind of have your own practice as an artist and a restaurant artist? Like,
Well, I think it's different here than it is in Houston.
Yeah.
Like our company in Houston we're, I guess, almost 12 years into
That was established before we met.
Yeah. And over the course of that kind of decade plus, we just keep getting more and more infrastructure from like a corporate standpoint. So we have like a director of operations, we've got a CFO, we've got, managers just coming out of the woodwork. And when you need to get something done and you have that infrastructure, you can kind of just be more of the delegator of stuff, which I love. But
It's because then you can be the idea guy, and then you go,
Yeah,
"Hey,
you don't
everybody, I got this idea. Can y'all go do that?" And they're
isn't
like,
that
"Great."
the dream?
yeah, and so this is the first one that we have opened on our own, which is a reminder of kind of how amazing some of that infrastructure is that we don't have here.
Right.
But
But my role in it kind of, I did run social media for our restaurants in Houston for 2 years, I guess. And then I can dabble in graphic design. And so I was doing some of the menus for some of the restaurants for a while. So when we did this, it's like, well, okay, I'll be on social media, I'll be on graphic design. So I did the logo and the menus, and then all the social media stuff is me. So when you're messaging, that's me.
For the first, I don't know, however long, I didn't know that. I didn't know who I was talking to, but I was just like, hi guys, we love you already.
No, a lot of people think it's Morgan, so I'll just respond as if I'm Morgan. And then some people are like, hey, Sarah. I'm like, I'll just let you think this is Sarah.
So did you just design the neon sign, or was that
The logo that was used on the neon sign I did design, but we have this incredible friend in Austin, Evan Boyles, who's a neon artist. And so we just handed him the logo, and then he kind of adapted it for the sign, and kind of added some sun rays and
stuff.
some rivers and stuff like that.
yeah, he's an artist in his own right.
Yeah.
And we've done a couple of signs with him for the restaurants, and it's like the best ones are always the ones where you just hand him kind of a general idea. And then you just let him
go.
Evan it from there. So this is the first kind of one that we've done that way with him.
With him.
He's
I mean,
amazing.
we didn't see it. Like Sarah sent us a couple pictures because she's really good friends with him along the way. And we didn't really see it until it was installed.
Yeah. It's just cool.
It looks so
It's like
good.
having a baby and
Yeah.
you don't know what it's going to be.
Right.
One of the things I love is, and I didn't know you did the logo, but the branding is so strong in the restaurant.
you.
Like it's just, there's a very clear aesthetic and a very clear feel. And I love it.
That all came
you.
together probably more organically than anything we've done.
Well, I think I spent a year on it. That was the thing. It was like there was no, like, we started brainstorming this during COVID when we had nothing to do. We had
Pretty
little
much.
kids, but like that's all we had to do. And we'd sit around at night by the fire and like talk about it and what's the vibe, what's the feel, how's it, all the little details. And so I just slowly worked on it, and then probably a year later is when we started doing it.
yeah.
And now you're in it.
And now we're in it.
Isn't that the most magical part? Like in the beginning, that dreaming phase of like,
Oh,
The
yeah.
dreaming phase is
Dreaming
the most
phase is-
fun part of it.
That's why we keep coming up with more ideas, because that's the fun part.
Yeah.
we come up with 1,000 ideas a day, but we have no time and no
Yeah,
money to
you're
make
right.
them happen. So we just have this idea, that idea that we would love for someone else to do.
Yes,
Right.
We
that's
don't
what
want to
we
do
always
it.
say.
Yeah.
It'd be nice, but we don't want to do it. But if we can make a person for every idea, like if we had a 3D printer to 3D print a person to take on this idea and
Oh, we need to get on that.
fruition, then
I like that.
this area would be booming with business
Yeah.
all over the place, and probably all over. Our ideas would be spread out throughout the world, I think.
So y'all just had a big party for Labor Day. You had a musician. So is that kind of going to be something that y'all are doing?
Yes, that is our plan. I mean, now that it's open, you can think about how something's supposed to be for 2 years or whatever it takes to get it open. And then once it gets open, you start like living in it and figuring out kind of what it really wants to be when it grows up. So now we're kind of in that phase of let's throw a bunch of stuff at the wall, see what resonates with people and what maybe doesn't, and just kind of lean in as you kind of continue to tweak it. But we love live music. Sarah Trapp, her whole background and family background. I mean, she grew up in Muscle Shoals, Alabama, which was, if you haven't seen the Muscle Shoals documentary, on the music scene that happened there in the 60s and 70s, it's just crazy iconic. And so she grew up in that, steeped in that world, and managed bands and put together festivals and shows like during South by Southwest and ACL in Austin. That's actually how we got her to move out here. She was in the middle of doing all that during the pandemic, and then it shut down. And we didn't know when we were going to all be able to go see live music again. She's like, well, I think maybe I just need to do something different for a while. So we somehow twisted her arm into moving to Leakey. But yeah, it's the live music in restaurants is hard because you typically don't charge for that. So you kind of have to hope that the live music itself brings enough people to kind of cost the band out, just like you would cost a cocktail out or a burger or something. Hopefully there's enough business to pay for, your nut for the band. So it's hard versus like a show where you sell tickets and you know that you're going to cover the cost of the band with the tickets. It's just kind of we want to do this as much as we can. We just have to make sure that it does draw in enough people to, pay for itself.
Well, and Sarah, we've been talking about Sarah, but Sarah is is she the manager?
She's our general manager.
Of Gypsy Sally's, which we hope to have you on, Sarah, someday on the podcast.
Hi, Sarah. Please come on our podcast.
But y'all have done a phenomenal job.
Thank you.
And all the food is great, and
So
I think
good.
my favorite, well, I have two steak tacos, which I know are your
Classic.
favorite.
That's my favorite.
I eat a lot of steak tacos.
And chicken queso tacos.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very creative idea and
Thank you.
very yummy. So I always
And
have
that's
to
still
get 2
just a
orders.
small portion of the menu, right?
Yeah,
Yes.
we're probably
Yeah.
at like 30% of what the menu is actually going to be. We're still, I mean, the supply chain stuff for the restaurants is still crazy. We were just like, all right, we can't wait another 3 to 6 months to get open just because we're waiting on this piece of equipment. Like we need to go. We have investors, you know, we have people that are like, how long is it going to take? I was like, well, we did it in less than a year. That's faster than any other restaurant I've ever opened. So, as the kitchen equipment gets kind of finalized, you know, we don't have fryers right now. So anything that we would normally put in a fryer, we just can't even explore that part of our brain. Or, you know, our oven's not totally working yet. So it's funny because it's like you think about this stuff as not being that consequential, but you're like, well, if I have an oven, like that opens up all kinds of other stuff I can do. And Matt is incredible.
I was going to say, it's amazing what Matt, our chef, has been able to do with the equipment that he currently has.
Yeah.
He's very resourceful.
He's great. He worked with us on and off in Houston for years, and he was my first choice of person to bring out here when we first started kicking this idea around. But he was at a great restaurant in Houston, and I was like, man, there's no way he's gonna bounce out here from that job. And then that restaurant just kind of, they had some financial issues and they closed overnight. And I saw him post on Facebook, and like, I think I had texted him within 2 minutes of him posting that. I was like, hey, need some help out here in Leakey for a couple of parties. You want to come check it out? And he was like, yeah, that sounds great. So they came out 2 weekends in a row. We had 2 big parties last spring. And by the end of the second one, he was like, man, it's really cool out here. And I was like, I was kind of hoping you'd say that. I sent him an offer, and they moved out like
A
2
month
weeks later.
Yeah,
a month
like
later.
real quick. Yeah.
So yeah, he and his girlfriend seem to be loving it. Yeah.
Wow. So you're in the business of restaurants, and a restaurateur, I guess, is
Yeah.
what your title would be.
I guess that's the technical title.
That is one of the most difficult businesses you can pursue. I mean, restaurants that I've heard it my entire life growing up. That is like one of the hardest things to do to be successful at. And you clearly y'all have been successful with Gypsy Sally's, and then you have other restaurants that you've been successful with. But have there been any failures?
Oh yeah.
That you would.
Oh yeah.
Okay. You would like to share with us?
2. One was the first time Matt and I worked together on like our own project. We had a regular customer at the restaurants in Houston that had this beautiful venue south of Houston, about an hour near Angleton. And it was under these beautiful, like 150-year-old pecan trees right on the Brazos River. It was an old horse barn that had been converted into a barbecue joint and like a little bar, outdoor music venue as well. And the guy who did that project died just suddenly. And so the owner, who was the regular at our restaurants, was like, man, I'd love for you to do something here. And you go down there, look at it, you immediately get the bug. It looks like what could be Houston's Lukenbach. Like, it's just cool honky tonk vibe. So he made it very painless for us to experiment out there, but we ran it for about 6 months, and we would have live music, and people would, like, regulars from the area would come in. They'd order like 1 Miller Lite, and then they would go back and forth to their truck all night shooting Jack Daniels. And I was like, again, going back to the music and bars thing, it doesn't work unless you're buying stuff. It's free. So the music's free. So that was one of those things that I just thought, man, this seems like it would make so much sense. And, you know, getting into the middle of it, it made 0 sense. And then we also kind of had a similar deal in Montrose, in the Montrose neighborhood in Houston. Had the opportunity to do a restaurant, second generation restaurant takeover from a place that wasn't doing well. And we turned around in 45 days from the time we got it to the time we reopened it. And it just, like, the the best things that we've ever done are the ones that we've had a clear amount of time to sit and think about and really flesh out the concept, which we thought we did here. Even the elevator pitch on what this restaurant was terrible. It was like tiki, but not like kitschy tiki, and the food's gonna kind of celebrate the different island cultures that exist around the world from the equator. And you're like,
Huh?
you're like, what does that even mean? So it's like, you could have food from, the South Pacific and Thailand and Mexico, around the, southern part of Mexico and the Caribbean. And it seemed like it was going to be just enough of a defining definition of what the restaurant is and isn't, to then still also give us a lot of flexibility with the food. Like you can kind of bounce all over a little bit. What we didn't realize was it's going to be massively confusing to every human being that walks in there. And it probably should have been way more kitschy tiki than it was. And it wasn't tucked back into a neighborhood. So it didn't automatically get a lot of traffic. And boy, we tried to make that thing work for 2 years so hard, just losing money every week, and not a little money. It was just like, so when the pandemic hit, we were like, perfect excuse to pull the ripcord on this thing. Let's punt this one.
Yeah.
But we're learning. I think from that, we
yeah.
learned, just because you can doesn't mean you should. And that's a big thing.
Yeah.
We're learning.
Yeah. Because there's always going to be opportunities, and they always sound way better in the beginning than they probably end up.
Because the idea phase, that's the fun part. You're like, yeah.
And staffing now is like one of my biggest concerns. It's just like, whether we're in Houston, we're in Leakey, or we're in Marfa, it's like they all have different personalities in the staffing needs and requirements. And they all have different personalities as humans and what drives and motivates them. But we don't get people, it's probably been 3 or 4 years. It was pre-pandemic. It was probably around 2018 when we just really stopped seeing humans walk into the building that were either extremely curious cooks that really work on their own. They constantly research, they travel for it to learn more and get exposed to new ideas. And it's the same with our bar staff. It's like when we started doing and focusing on classic cocktails in the late 2000s, there were very few resources because the American cocktail movement was just kind of getting reborn around 2006, 2007. There were a handful of bars in the country that were focusing on doing like craft cocktails with good spirits and kind of leaning into that pre-prohibition era golden age of cocktails from like 1880 to 1920 or so. And so we had to figure all that crap out on our own and, go find old cocktail books from 1890 and figure out like what they were doing then, and then try to figure out one of my favorite, a little bit of a birdwalk tangent, but one of my favorite things about those old cocktail books is they would, nowadays we're like, okay, it's 1.5 ounces of this, it's 3/4 ounce of this, it's 1/2 ounce of this. In the old days, it was a full wine glass of this, a half wine glass of this, a sherry cup of this. And you're like, well, how big is your wine glass? Am I making like a 1/2 gallon drink here? Get one of those big modern wine glasses. It holds like 14 ounces. And so but that was part of the fun, like figuring that out and kind of understanding, no, it's more about the ratios than the actual measurement. And if you couldn't find a cocktail ingredient, you kind of did some research to figure out what it used to taste like, and then maybe reverse engineer something yourself to get as close to that as you can. Or like a buddy of mine had, Ameripicon is a French vermouth, Amaro, that went out of, I think they went out of business during Prohibition, but all of these old cocktails called for Ameripicon. And then like a buddy of mine found an unopened bottle of Ameripicon, like from the 30s or way, way back when. he's like, let's all taste it together and see if we can kind of figure out how to make something similar to that, so we can start making all these old cocktails that we can't get the ingredients for anymore. So it's like, that's kind of where my restaurant and bar interest started. And now, move forward 10 or 12 years. And like, we have cocktail book after cocktail book after cocktail book. We have YouTube. We have, cookbooks that are being printed at a record rate every year. And, you got some guy come in and he like doesn't know how to make an omelet without burning it, And it's just like,
That's me.
This is just
Me too.
Like this, but you're not a professional cook either. So it's like, all of this information exists and everybody's so lazy that, you have to hand feed them everything. And that's become the frustrating thing with running restaurants and bars now. It's like, people want to either be spoon fed, or if you lean on them too hard to do a good job, they can go get a job yesterday at another restaurant because everybody's desperate. So it's like the quality of staff in Houston and this is not a blanket statement because we have amazing staff at our restaurants, but just the numbers of people that come in like really wanting to learn and really wanting to do a good job, and that's out the door now.
We've heard that across the board from everybody. It's just hard to get people, and out here it's a whole nother animal because the pool is so small. There's only 200 people who live in Concan, maybe a couple thousand that live in Leakey, 1,300. I don't know.
555 was the last number I saw.
555
People.
But that's just in the city limits proper. Like, there's probably, I think Real County in this area has about 2,000 people.
Okay. So there's
they
people
just don't
out
all
on the
live in
hill.
town. The hills are full. The hills are full.
But it's just such a smaller pool. And so that limits a lot of the ideas that we have for things that we want to do because we don't have a staff. We have somebody who helps us clean, and then it's just us. And we kind of are in that sweet spot of we, run the whole thing just like that.
Yeah.
And it works out. But any other ideas we have, we would need people, and there's just not a whole lot of people out here.
Yeah.
And we can't convince everybody to move. So,
Well, because then if they move, then where do they live?
exactly.
Like, there's housing is a problem.
Yeah.
Like in Marfa at the distillery, it's also a private event space. And we have identified, based on kind of how many weddings come through Marfa, that we could do, and then all the other festivals and private events and whatnot. We probably could do $500,000 to $1 million in private events a year at the distillery property, but we don't have a chef right now, and we've desperately been looking for one. But it's like, it's so painful to know that like
It's
that
right
could
there.
bring in serious revenue. We just have to find somebody that's good enough to be able to move, that wants to live out there and in that kind of brain space, because it's not for everybody. It's you're either going to love it or it's going to eat you alive. But then also have the skill set to pull off, a $50,000 wedding for 150 people in a night. It's I don't know where all the people went, but
That's
they
kind of
apparently don't need to work.
I guess the chase for something like that, the pursuit to find someone who can fill that and make that can kind of bridge that gap. You can see it, but we need a bridge to get to it. And who once you find that person who can be the bridge, it's kind of a little bit gratifying.
Oh yeah,
I mean,
super satisfying.
Like going through the journey and figuring out that you can do this if you have this person, and then going to the next step and finding the person. Is that kind of a typical process that you kind of?
I mean, I love to promote from within, because our experience is that you can read somebody's good resume, they can come in and have a great interview, and 3 months into their tenure with you, they look like a totally different person than they interviewed as. Maybe their experience was a little bit hyperbolic in as to what they put on their resume. and you're just like, yeah, like, now we got to get rid of this person. That's a whole thing. So we really like to promote from within. Like if you've been with us for 3 years and we've seen how you work every day, and then we can also get a barometer on how you started versus how you are right now, and you've evolved and you've gotten better at what you do. That's a more surefire way to get better managers from my perspective. Cause there's just less surprises, but, we really, I love to cultivate staff, and, I'm not in the same stretch. I'm not like a very good hand holder. Like I will set you up with everything you need to be successful, hopefully. But if I have to constantly, if we're talking every day, and most of those talks are like pep talks, it's probably not going to be good for very long. Like I just can't.
You can see the writing on the wall, huh?
Yeah. It's like, it's going to be so much work just to get you where I feel like you need to be. And then I don't know if you're going to get there, and then what? So I don't mean to be negative about that, but
Well, you're also not always there to be able to hold somebody's hand. I mean,
Yeah.
you get a call and you got to drive to Houston, or you get a call and you got to drive to Marfa, and sometimes you're just physically not here. So if people need you that badly, it's just not going to work.
yeah.
And that's, I don't think that's negative either. I think that's just an insight into what a person in your shoes has to deal with. One of the many things, I'm sure, when it comes to running one of your restaurants, or or even someone in your business. And that can be a chef or a director. I mean, I think that can happen, but that's something that you it's always top of mind. You're always
Totally.
thinking about. And, you know,
I don't know if y'all get this, but we get this all the time of people saying, y'all are living my dream. You're doing exactly what I want to do. And it's like, it's great and it's fun and we love it. But there's also some really hard stuff that comes along with it that you don't know until you're in it. And I think staffing and everything you just talked about is one of those things for people who want to open up a restaurant. Like it's
It's a
not
lot.
the easiest thing in the world.
Yeah.
So it's good to know the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Yeah, I feel like anybody who looks like they're making it look easy is really probably just a good like external compartmentalizer. Like you don't want to know what it takes to do what they're doing.
Yeah,
You know?
I mean, people say that about you all the time. Like, my parents for a long time were like, does Morgan work? I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, he works like a crazy person. They're like, well, when I see him, he's like chilling. He's the party guy. You know, he's like, everybody come to our house and we're going to cook and we're going to do this. And he makes it look so easy and he seems so relaxed. I'm like, well, like, I know that he takes melatonin every night because he can't go to sleep because his brain won't turn off.
Yeah. It's to do, I mean, y'all know this, to do anything from scratch on your own, it's hard. And then there are days that you're like, why am I doing this? But then, you know, you create something that you're proud of and you get to see people enjoy it. And that's like its own drug.
And we have a weekend like Labor Day where like everyone's out and it's so much fun and everyone's like obviously having fun. And that's so satisfying. We're like, okay, it's worth it.
Yeah. What's it been like for y'all making the transition to no kids and doing the whole business thing into having kids and then doing the business thing? And I know you just figure it out, right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
what's
Every
that
day's
been like?
different.
You know, when we had our first boy, you know, a bunch of people like, oh, your life's over. Like, you know what I mean? And I had a friend in New York, or have a friend in New York, and they've always traveled with their daughter. And like early on going to Europe for a month at a time.
Yeah, like
for
serious
work,
plane rides and stuff, like real
travel. And he was like, oh, you know, screw those people, Morgan.
He's real New York. He's real snappy.
He's like, you just throw that kid on your back and take him with you. It'll be better for it. And so we kind of did that. We did during the pandemic. We didn't need to be here, so we drove up to Montana with our little camping. We've kind of got this
like that
off-grid
age.
camping trailer, and we just took Eli with us and we didn't know when we were going to be back. We took about a week to get up there, and we were there for a month, and we took about a week to get back. And we were just camping and get a hotel every now and then, but
Get a shower.
get a good shower.
Do some laundry.
But it was like,
Get
you know,
back.
this kid is entering our world. We're not entering his world. And we did, it was easier with one because we took him to restaurants. We did all that stuff. He would fall asleep in his car seat at the restaurant. That was amazing. With two, that we definitely had to slow down a little bit more because dining out with both of them is like, I'd rather peel my fingernails off than do that. It's just not fun. And one day again, it will be, but it's not right now. So,
Well, that's why we have our own restaurant, so that at least I know everybody.
It was so cute at the Labor Day party because there was a ton of people and a
kids.
ton of
A
kids,
ton of
and
kids.
all the kids were just playing and running around, and they came and checked on Luna.
Yeah.
Eli came and checked on her. Yeah.
And it was just so fun to see all the kids play. They were digging in the sand,
Yeah, a little
and
sandbox.
they made their own
Parking lot.
sandbox, and
Yeah,
it was just
the
it was
parking lot
really
sand.
cool. Yeah, to just
Yeah.
see all the kids just kind of
when we
being
always
wild.
kind of envisioned it that way. It's like, you know, you have families up here. We have to be family friendly. Like, we really wanted to figure out. There was a Tex-Mex chain in Houston when we were growing up called Lupe Tortilla, and Lupe Tortilla is still around. But every Lupe Tortilla had a kids play set within the patio
Sandbox,
of the
a
bar,
big
like the sandbox. And
Next to the bar. So it was like bar.
And so
sandbox.
parents would
like,
come
that was
up.
very strategic.
and just kick their kids into the sandbox and lock the gate.
Andale.
And and then just hammer margaritas.
That was my childhood. I grew up at Lupe Tortilla in the sandbox, and my parents would drink margaritas. And then they started making virgin margaritas because all the kids, like, we were like, I want one. And so
Yeah.
they started doing that so we could go get our frozen strawberry virgin margarita.
They've since pulled all those out of those restaurants, and I don't know if it was because they got
It might have become a problem.
worried about, you know, dad driving home after 5 marks
Yeah.
with the kids in the car. But we always envisioned it as a place for families to bring their kids and not stress out. We've still got some ongoing projects, like that whole area where the kind of sand is right now is going to become like this kind of gray basalt rock patio. So we got to get rid of all that gross asphalt, and we'll go ahead and enclose the rest of the space. So if kids are on the patio, you don't have to, you know, worry about them running out in the street and stuff like that. But always another project.
Yeah. Are you from Houston?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Born and raised?
Born and raised. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Morgan, did you tell them where you're from? Morgan?
No, I grew up in Yoakum, Texas, which is a small town. It's bigger than Leakey, but small town kind of near the coast, Victoria area.
Yeah. I ate at a barbecue place there many years ago, and I used to travel a lot.
Uh-huh.
Like for 2 years, just hit the road, all these small towns in Texas, and every time we saw a barbecue place, we would stop and eat. And we were in Yoakum this particular time, and it was I don't know, it might have been during the week, and you might know what day it is because we got there late. It was dinner time, and we hung out, and then we noticed that some folks were started moving some of the tables, pushing them off to the walls. We're like, what's going on here? So we had no idea, but we asked the waiter, hey, what's going on? Why are they pushing all these tables back? It's like, this place turns into we do a dance here.
Oh, nice.
That's fun.
Every week or whatever. So once the restaurant closes, we just
Was it kind of near downtown?
It's been a while.
Yeah.
It's been over 10 years. So.
I think that place isn't open anymore, but man, their barbecue was good. I never went for one of the dances.
Well,
I've
we
been
didn't
away
stay,
from
so-
Yoakum for a while.
Yeah, but Yoakum, interesting place, and
Yeah.
I think do they make belts there? Is there a belt?
Yeah,
okay.
it used to be big leather industry. There were 3 or 4 pretty sizable leather factories that did belts and gloves and all that, and then 2 big saddle shops that make those crazy expensive like rodeo decoration saddles and stuff like that. So the saddle shops are still there, and then there's a few meat packing plants, but Yoakum has evolved quite a bit since I've been there, like kind of negatively.
If we could pick up downtown Yoakum and put it in downtown Leakey,
I mean, the buildings are great.
They're amazing.
Yeah.
That's what we always say about Kong Can, because at least Leakey has some structure.
Right.
Kong Can, there's no structure.
Yeah.
If you're there's no cool old buildings that you can turn into something.
They don't have that Main Street kind of feel.
I mean, we're not even a real town. We're an unincorporated community.
Right.
But there's some structure in Leakey to work with. But I see old historical downtowns. It's just like, oh.
Or like Sabinal's downtown.
Yes,
Is so good.
Sabinal's great.
Every time we drive through, we're like, so much potential.
Well, I'm excited about what's going on in Leakey. We definitely need more and more synergy, but there's a lot of cool stuff in the works, and I think it'll be great for the area.
Yeah, we can't wait either, and we also can't wait to see your dream come to fruition.
Oh, thank
see
you.
where that goes, and there's a lot of possibilities there with mohair.
Yeah, that's it.
Mohair.
Yeah.
I learned what. Do you know about mohair?
Yeah.
Mohair jacket.
Yeah.
Where does it come from?
Does it come from the goat?
Which does.
The Angora goat?
You nailed it.
She's a pro.
Pop quiz.
I was questioning myself for a second.
Well, thank y'all for coming on. And,
Absolutely.
and
Yeah,
Thank you
thanks
for
for
having
it
us.
was a treat. And if there was anyone who may have heard this and maybe that he's or she is a chef, they might be interested in taking that job.
Give me a call.
Where would they find you?
Let me see.
Probably Instagram.
The easiest place is Instagram, Morgan F. Weber on Instagram, or email me at morgan@themarfaspirit.com.
Okay. And you'll be posting future events on your Gypsy Sally socials?
The best way to keep up with Gypsy Sally's is definitely through Instagram. Gypsy.sallys.leakey.
No dots.
No dots, just Gypsy Sally's Leakey.
Yep.
Yep.
Awesome. Well, we look forward to seeing you at those events.
Well, thank y'all for the
Yeah, thank
support,
y'all.
having us on. This was fun.
Alrighty, everyone. Well, thank y'all for joining us, and we hope to see y'all next time. Hasta luego.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.